We are officially halfway through best ball season. And now's the time that I think last week we did our little what we were upset about. This week we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we got right. We'll go back to some of the stuff we got wrong. I will do a lot of victory lapping. I am guessing that I am advancing way more teams than Erik Beimfohr and Best Ball Mania. I think that's something that we should probably focus on for the majority of the show, but maybe we'll hit on a few other things. And we want to know what you guys are doing. What do you think is working in Best Ball this year? What do you see going forward as the state of Best Ball? How do you want to play it? We're going to get into all of that and more on this week's Spike Week football show. I guess I should clarify a little bit, Erik. We are halfway through the regular season for Best Ball before we hit the playoffs and go through all of that. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that people weren't like, "Hey, you idiot! It's only week 8 coming up. There's 17 weeks. Didn't you make a song about it, bro?" Like, yeah, I did.
Halfway for the advance rate, bros.
Yeah,
this is very important, right? We get to calculate our advance rate every week and pretend that it matters a ton now. Yeah. So it's really important. This is the best. Everything that has happened so far is what's going to happen the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. You know, just like we saw last year. The winners are declared right now, and so this report card is really the end. This is it.
As everyone remembers, you could stomp on the grave of Rashad Penny around week 8 last year and say, "I'm so glad I didn't take that guy." And yeah, you were right. Clearly, like that worked out real well for everybody, right?
Yep, exactly. Derrick Henry was the league winner. You were a moron. You know, the zero RB bros were idiots. Yep. You're a moron for fading Derrick Henry. Rashad Penny was dust. Amon-Ra St. Brown was useless. Hadn't done anything, you know. But that is an interesting kind of like maybe intro or segue into this subject, because obviously I'm being facetious and like what has happened so far matters, right? You could have the best week 17 team of all time. If it doesn't advance, it doesn't matter. But like, nobody knows. I certainly don't know. Like, how do you toe that line, right? What's the tipping point? We can victory lap our first 7 weeks of, I faded Najee Harris. Like, cool, congratulations. But like, if Najee scores 4 touchdowns in week 17, were you right? Were you wrong? Like, I don't know. It's still this is like such a fascinating discussion to me, because I don't think there's a right answer, but I also haven't heard anybody like have any like super strong takes on it or anything.
Well, I can victory lap my ass off from Best Ball Mania right now. I'm advancing 41 out of 150 at the moment, which is pretty significant. But here's the catch. My Mahomes exposure is what, like 40% or something?
More than 100.
Yeah, and the Chiefs are on bye this week. So what do we think that advance rate exposure is going to do after this weekend? It's going to probably plummet, most likely. Mm-hmm. We've seen what some of these, backup quarterback, well, not backup quarterbacks, but like your best ball backup quarterbacks are doing. If you didn't take an elite quarterback, Matt Ryan literally turned into a ball of dust and like exploded into the stadium. And he's so dust that the coach is like, yeah, he's hurt, so he's not playing. But even if he wasn't hurt, he wouldn't be playing. And we don't plan to play him ever again. So that's part of the discussion I do want to have with you. I think this is the perfect day to do that as we talk about advance rates, as we talk about strategies going forward. And we should probably be getting hit with playoff best ball pretty soon for the NFL.
Probably pretty soon. Just to piggyback on the quarterback thing. I mean, what, like we talked about, you mentioned when we talked about the stuff we were tilting, like the tight end position. And of course, that's worse than quarterback overall. Yeah. But dude, quarterback, if you don't have like it going, especially going through that. So this past week was horrible for me. All my best teams where, I'm very heavy Bills. I'm very heavy Eagles, at least like on all my best teams. Rams, all like, so like I just plummeted this past week. I drafted not a lot, but like Russell Wilson out. So like, even though he wasn't on bye, right, he was out, and the whole Broncos team might as well have been on bye. You weren't getting anything from the Broncos. I guess maybe 18th round Dulcich was like kind of usable. It's just there's Mac Jones. Mac Jones is losing his job to Bailey Zappi. Matt Ryan is benched. Carson Wentz is hurt, and who knows if he'll. They suck. I guess they did beat the Packers, so maybe they'll keep fighting or something. But if Heineke wins a few games, are they going to go back to Wentz? I don't know. All these late round guys, right, are just like turning to dust. This is weird to say because we're all tilting the Falcons like crazy. Like Marcus Mariota is like one of my saving graces. Not that he's like smashing, but he's like, it's good enough. Like, dude, give me 18. If I can get 18 points from a late round quarterback right now, like every week, like I'm happy as a clam. And so quarterback is just really, really killing me. And the bye weeks are definitely going to be absolutely crazy to see because the ups and downs are going to be wild. I think somebody asked in chat today, can you what's like a good score to look for? Or like, how should I think about my teams basically like that maybe aren't advancing right now? And my honest take was just like, dude, honestly, it's wide open. As long as if your team is like mostly healthy, and like particularly if like you pass the buys already with like a lot of your core guys, maybe you're getting Swift back, maybe you have Hopkins, maybe those kinds of things. Like, dude, I don't care if I'm down 100 points. You can come back in 7 weeks. So I just think it's so wide open right now because it's just there's so much chaos.
Yeah, the injuries are starting to pile up, so teams are starting to shift. I think I want to hit on this quarterback point because this has been a point that I've been bringing up like since probably February. And I think it's going to be a big focal point next year as we're talking about building teams. And that is the quarterback position. So for me, I was all about elite QBs this year. Like not just Mahomes. Like if it wasn't Mahomes, I wanted Hurts. I wanted Josh Allen. Like these are the guys that I absolutely wanted. Like, so for instance, my top quarterback, of course, the thing just did what I didn't want it to do. My top exposure is obviously Mahomes at 37% in Best Ball Mania. But then my next guys are, Trevor Lawrence, kind of an outlier, was a late round pick, but Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Like of my top 6, it was 5 of the 5 elite guys minus Herbert, right? So, and I did this because I see just such a like if you don't have one of those guys on like a 1 week's thing and they go off for 40, you're dust. We saw it. Burrow did it this week, right? Like Burrow went off for 40, and if you didn't have Burrow, you were basically dust in DFS. And when you get to week 17, all of these guys are going to be starting. It's easier to fade them when some of them are on bye weeks. When Hurts and Josh Allen, you could be like, all right, all I got to do is get by Lamar Jackson, and as long as my quarterback gets 20, then I'm good. But week 17, they're all live, man. Like all of these guys are there to put up 40 points. So my thought process throughout all of drafting was, I want an elite quarterback, and I don't feel good about the team if I don't get one of them. So we saw that during the resurrection drafts, that quarterbacks got pushed up the board heavily. And we alluded to this in the preseason that this was going to happen next year. I thought that they were going to start getting pushed up, but 3 in the first round, essentially, in these resurrection drafts. And I don't know if you'll get 3 in the first round for regular drafts next year, but you're not getting Mahomes and Lamar and, these guys, Jalen Hurts, in the 5th round next year. It's not happening. They're getting pushed up. And it might just be Josh Allen in the first, and then we're going to have to establish how we want to play this. Like, it's going to be a different game because of the quarterback position next year, in my opinion.
It's definitely going to be a different game. I totally agree. Like you said, we saw it in the resurrection. I don't know how I feel about it just yet. I haven't honestly spent a lot of time thinking about it. I definitely agree like that this year. So I was just looking at just in Best Ball Mania, my quarterback exposure. Gosh dang it, I just unsorted it. But it is, of course, It is of course it is of course Trey Lance at number one, which is also part of what's probably hurting me is, just Trey Lance. Thank God Hollywood isn't done for the season. That helps. But Trey Lance, Javonte, Hollywood, I'm trying to think of, some of these injured guys. I keep going through my teams hoping that they're on the same teams. I'm like, okay, oh crap, this is a Lance team. Please God, let that be a Javonte team and a Hollywood team, and let's just throw that team out and keep as many live teams as possible. But my quarterback exposure was Lance, Kyler, Mariota, Mahomes, Hurts, then Mac Jones, Russ, Tua. So Lamar is like 10th or something like that, which I actually don't feel too terrible about. I know he had a couple of big weeks, but I was really focused in. You kind of got me on to make sure, don't be an idiot. Just take Mahomes. Just take Mahomes. I feel good about that. I was always on Lance. I don't really feel, that's just an injury. Kyler was really kind of my guy, which is not really came through, but you're not like mad that you have Kyler. It was like, again, somebody in the Discord was like, oh man, my Kyler teams are really sucking. I'm like, dude, Kyler is like the least of my concerns. Like, he's still scoring like 20 points, he's scoring 20 points a week. Like, no, he's losing to Josh Allen and stuff, but it's better that than Russell Wilson. Would you rather have Russ and Mac Jones teams? Those are actually dead as opposed to Kyler. So, I wish I would have, I certainly wish I would have done a little bit more like you, but I definitely made kind of the elite quarterbacks with a couple of caveats, right? I got into Mariota. I did like Tua quite a bit and Mac Jones, sadly, which is like so frustrating to get beat out by Bailey Zappi. But I'm wondering about what next year is going to look like. We are going to get an influx of some rookies, which again have failed us mostly for the last couple of seasons, but that hasn't been the case, for the last 5 years or whatever. And I just wonder about like, what's the, I'm certainly not an EV genius, but what's the payoff, at least not even just the EV, but what's the payoff of next year if Bryce Young or something like that, is going in the 10th, lands on whoever, the 49ers or whatever, Jimmy will be gone. They give up on Lance, right? But lands in a good spot, lands on the Colts. The Colts are going to tank, right? And they have Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman and some reasonable skill players, and they get a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young or something. What's the payoff of that guy as your quarterback getting close enough? No one's ever going to match Josh Allen, but at a first round or second round price. That's why Josh Allen isn't one of my highest owned guys. The opportunity cost was like actually fairly real. T. Higgins or Josh Allen. In the fifth round, it was like Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks, those kind of guys. Brees, I guess, which could have been bad and isn't anymore. But like the opportunity cost this year made it really clear to me. Like there was a steep drop in that mid tier. It was like Allen Robinson, Brandon Cooks, those kind of guys. Next year, if it gets pushed up, it's like, how do we do this equation of this 2v2 basically, right? Like the upside low probability shot on the rookie or Fields. Maybe Fields is a 9th round pick next year or something, and they make improvements. We saw his upside last night. I really am struggling with this because it's never happened before. This is like, I guess since we were like 10 or whatever, when they used to take the Brett Favre in the first round. It's never happened before. And it's like so against my nature and like everything I feel comfortable doing when I have to pass on whatever, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, those guys for a quarterback, I don't know what you think about it.
It's the evolution of the position, right? So let's go back 12, 13 years when Michael Vick was the only one that was capable of putting up 40. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget the Monday night game, how much I was down in my actual fantasy league, and all I had was Michael Vick left, and I had to get like 32 points, and I'm like, a quarterback will never score 32 points. And here's Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson loading up 90-yard touchdowns every other drive, and I get there. But now it's not just Michael Vick. There's five guys, with some guys that are still capable of doing it outside of those five that can do it every week. Like Josh Allen can get you 40 almost every week. Lamar Jackson, when the team's healthy, can get you 40. Mahomes, he's throwing to my garbage man right now, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and he's dropping 30-point weeks every week. So the position has evolved, and we need to, and I saw it this year, and like I feel like I'm like trying to like gloat, but I saw it coming this year. That's why I was like real heavy on I thought we were getting value at a lot of these guys, Lamar, Mahomes in the 5th round. I was fading Herbert because I was like, why would I grab Herbert before grabbing Mahomes or Lamar? It doesn't make sense to me. And Hurts. We were all, I mean, if you were about the Eagles passing game, you should have been grabbing Hurts at a high clip, especially earlier before he flipped Murray. Like, we were all shocked when he flipped Kyler, but it made sense. Like in a vacuum, they've actually flipped positions this year, where last year Hurts was a solid 18 to 20 every game, but he was never going to get you a ceiling. And Kyler had that 40-point ceiling. Now they're like reversed, where Hurts is capable of hitting for 40 if he ever gets anyone that pushes him. So all that being said, I don't really know how to play it next year, but I think they're all getting pushed up, and not just the elites. That's going to push up for me. The last tier was who you brought up, Tua and Lawrence this year, were like where I always wanted to end my QBs. And that was what, 12th round, 11th round, somewhere in that wheelhouse. That's probably going to be 9th round, maybe higher. And we're going to have to take the off season. And I think this is especially why you're going to want to draft early next year, because I think you're going to be able to get those QB values early. And then I think that the QBs are just going to get bubbled up to the top on every level. So you are going to be, people were worried about getting locked out of quarterback this year. It's going to be like nothing once, July, the end of July, early August hits next year.
That's a really good point. I love the early drafting idea. The other thing that happens, comparing early versus late drafting, is just there's so many more draftable guys early that the player pool is 300 players or something like that, right? Because there's these dudes who end up, right? Trey Sermon gets cut, but he's going in the 16th round or whatever, right? Brashad Perriman last year, etc. There's all these guys that look draftable in June, so the player pool expands, which just allows not everybody, right? Josh Allen isn't going to fall because of that, but it might allow Tua, Fields, whatever, who pick a guy, right? It allows something like kind of what happened with Kyler this year. Kyler ended up falling more, but he was like the last of that tier once Hurts flipped him. And then, but just over the course of the offseason, it's like, well, sometimes guys get hurt, or we just learn more information, right? We learn that this guy is like, this dead zone running back is like, oh shit. This guy's like Cam Akers, we can't draft him. What turned out to what we thought was maybe Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs starts in the 5th round, ends in the 9th. There's movement amongst these other players because we learn so much, but quarterbacks like stable, right? We know who the starting quarterbacks are outside of like San Francisco this year, people thought, right? Or 1 or 2 spots. We know that Pittsburgh, we know the starting quarterback. So those guys don't really fluctuate. Right. So as the player pool shrinks, what happens to the quarterbacks? They all go up. They all have to go up because the positions players are only dropping. You know what I mean? And so drafting early is how you can get not necessarily on Josh Allen, but even if you're not getting value, like closing line value on Josh Allen and Mahomes and all of that, you can get closing line value on other players. Yeah,
Justin Fields is probably going to be a big one next year.
Or the skill players, right? So you didn't get value on Mahomes, but like this year's George Pickens, this year's Ramondre, this year's, right? These guys who went from much later to absolutely skyrocketed up boards. Sky Moore, who, is a bust, but skyrocketed up boards. Like the early thing is both able to get value on maybe that quarterback that does rise, the Trey Lance of 2 years ago, right? If you drafted early, you got Trey Lance in like the 14th round. Why do you think everybody was touting him? Because like if he won the job, he's a 14th fucking round pick. And with the quarterback stuff that you're talking about is absurd value. And now we insert somebody else, Fields, one of the rookies, to Lawrence, whatever. And now, who knows what's going to go on with Brady? Maybe somebody ends up right. Maybe Brady goes to San Francisco and somebody else goes to Tampa. There's just so many ways for you to extract value by drafting early, and the quarterbacks stand to benefit from that the most, really.
Yeah. So that I think is going to be, I think it's not only going to be a big discussion between us, but I think the entire like industry is going to be having this
Yes.
discussion next year.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that we are ahead of it, that we are like one of the first ones that are having this discussion before anyone else, like not to just tout it, but because I think it's very important. So
you think people struggle with like zero RB? It's like zero RB is proven to work. Robust RB, right? Vice versa. The two, right? The butting of the heads of the running back bros versus the wide receiver bros. You think people like put their head in a pretzel over arguing that shit? Wait till we got 6 quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds or 2 rounds or whatever. Like people are going to lose because there's going to be people like, you can't do that. And then they draft like normal and their teams are Mac Jones and Baker Mayfield or whatever. And like, they're dead. It's over. Like because at a certain point you can say this is not right. But like you said, if you get locked out, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong because your team is dead. You donated. You can't be stubborn and be so stubborn that you build bad teams. You have to draft in the environment that you're in, right? You don't want to leave your whole 150 in BBM without the elite quarterbacks. Like you have to dip your toe. It's like hopscotch. You got to get in there at some point. But like, I don't know what the right strategy is over a portfolio, but you can't just, it can't be binary. You can't say, this is right or this is wrong. So it's going to be fascinating. I'm really, really interested to see how that goes.
It's one of my favorite things is to do like a poker analogy. So back in the day, like when you were playing poker, the only time that you would 3-bet or re-raise somebody that already raised, you only did it with aces or kings or queens or, the top 5 premium hands. Once people started like 3-betting with 7-8 suited, like the OG bros of poker were like, you can't do that. That doesn't make sense. And blah, blah, blah. And guess what happened to them? They got dusted off.
Yep.
Like, and left for dead because the game evolved without them. So that's every year we need to be looking at what is the evolution of best ball going to be and how can we get ahead of it? So this, I think, is going to be a staple of that discussion next year. So we
Definitely.
can kind of put
Mark said, I just want to hit this.
Yeah.
What you said is what Mark said. The cost is the cost. The market decides the efficiency of all this. You can do what you want with it. You can, like you said, you can be the OG bro and be like, I'm not taking a quarterback there, right? I'm not making that raise. That's stupid. But like, if you don't evolve with the game, same thing has happened in DFS, right? Guys are playing different teams. Go watch Whistles. If anybody knows Whistles Go Woo, Ricky D, all these guys, the best players in the Ricky D just won $1 million. Why are they the best? It's because they're always evolving with the game. They're doing different things that other people aren't doing. And they're like leaning into this stuff. And if you don't figure out a way to be effective in that new environment, it doesn't matter if like what your principles are, right? That's not the plus EV way to draft. Well, if the market dictates it as such, like, what are you going to do? You're going to win a tournament with a bunch of Mac Jones, Carson Wentz teams? No, you're not. You're just dead.
Yeah, you're going to be absolutely dead. So, good point by Vadim, who says,
"Oh, sorry."
Some would say we skate to where the puck goes, which is true. That is what we need to do. That's what we needed to be evolving, and that's how we can stay ahead of people. We thought best ball grew this year, right? What do you think is going to happen next year? All the underdog commercials started hitting the screen. Like I remember taking a day off this past drafting season. I'm like, I'm not drafting. I'm not opening the underdog app. I went out to grab a drink with somebody. And while I was at the bar, 3 underdog commercials came on, literally. And I'm just like, I can't escape it. So like, if I can't escape it and the casuals are starting to see it at the bar, I'm going to have a video coming out in the next week or 2 about this, but like, it's going to be even bigger next year. There's going to be even more people doing it. You can draft a team and you don't have to set your lineup. People are going to go nuts. And the more people discover it, the bigger it's going to get. So it's going to be, we want to stay ahead of those people. We want to get the people in that are like drafting like it's their home league, right? Like where, they were told that they need to draft running backs and they can punt quarterback because they could do that in 2014. And we want to be ahead of that. But let's end the quarterback discussion. Yeah. What is something you would like the victory lap from the offseason that you were doing that seems right?
See, I think people might disagree with this because some of the high-end running backs have bounced back a little bit, mainly Eckler. right? Eckler is now the RB1, and he's been awesome. He's been great. I mean, shit. Look, I've been playing him in DFS, so we're hedging our bets with the Eckler fade, but then playing him every week in DFS while he scores 40 freaking fantasy points. But to me, it is absolutely zero running back, and not just like literally building zero running back teams, but like a zero running back like approach to your portfolio. It was more Saquon for me, like anchor Saquon and Javonte. Saquon and Javonte were like more of my most frequent anchors, right? And so that's kind of it's a 50-50, 50% hit rate. You would have, like, if you did it with like Saquon and Eckler as like your two anchors, like you're just absolutely printing money. And of course, I wish I had a little bit different blend, right? A little more Josh Jacobs, a little more Ken Walker, whatever. But that just is what it is. But like that was like this quarterback meta that we're talking about. The running back thing was the next evolution to me. Like talking about skating to where the puck is going, seeing how offenses are changing, seeing how the NFL is changing from a passing perspective, like just all these kind of, we also talked about this with the Eagles, right? The Eagles were showing us what they wanted to do. Well, the NFL has been showing us what they want to do. And it is more passing, and not even just more passing, but more like committee style backfields. And then when you lose a member of that committee, or maybe someone just shows themselves, right? Ramondre may be starting to take over. ETN started to take over. The better player, Brees started to take over. The better player starts to show himself. They earn more work. And so a zero running, those guys are never going to be expensive in drafts, relatively speaking, or at least not relative to their talent. And so focusing your roster construction around the not even just talented running backs, but contingency based running backs with the superstar wide receivers and the superstar tight ends and the superstar quarterbacks, right? Those are all the easiest way to gain an edge. If you have Josh Jacobs and Ramondre Stevenson, do you give a shit if you have Austin Eckler? No, you probably want Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, right. or Stephon Diggs or Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp. You want those guys when you have these smash running backs, and there's tons of them, right? Melvin hasn't really hit, but the thesis for Melvin Gordon has hit, right? The thesis for Darrell Henderson has hit. The thesis for Eno Benjamin has largely hit. Like there's a million of them, tons. And so you just needed to hit the right combination. I only have a handful of teams that have kind of really hit that combination, but man, if you got Ken Walker and Ramondre and Josh Jacobs and all Darrell Henderson and all these guys on a team, you're just with like Lamar, where with Mahomes and Kelce and Tyreek, and you're just shitting on everybody. It was the easiest way to win this year, in my opinion.
So just because you hit on some of the guys, I think we brought up the team last week, but me and Pete's big dog team, right? Our running backs are Fournette, Breece Hall, which is unfortunate, Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, and we're in the big dog, and we are
literally the nuts. I know Breece got hurt, right? But if Breece is healthy, that is the absolute stone cold nut running back room, and you didn't even spend a top 2-round pick, 3-round pick on him.
And you advance 4 in the big dog. You advance 4 out of 12, and we are in first with 918. Second place is 826. And we built a good team around it. We have Hurts at quarterback. We have CD. We have AJ Brown, like as our top 2 wideouts. I mean, we're running pure at tight end too with Everett and Mike Gesicki. But like, we built that team specifically because people were fading running backs, like in the dead zone rounds. And we got Josh Jacobs like 50 picks past ADP or something like that. It was absolutely bonkers. So yeah, you can build these teams properly. And I'd look at that team. I'm like, even with Breece going down, I'm like, I don't need Eckler on this team. I'm glad we drafted, God, I already forget who we drafted in the first round on that team. As we talked, we drafted CD in the first round, and like, no one loves drafting CD in the first round, but it got us a CD AJ Brown combo. Like in that,
you would rather have that with that running back room when the advantage of hitting on Jacobs, Walker, Breece, that is you're getting a weekly projection and a weekly ceiling close enough to Eckler, and then you're getting the superstar wide receiver that those 10th round wide receivers cannot match, right? We love to talk about like, oh, well, maybe not recently. Drake London is a hit, and Garrett Wilson is a hit, and these middle round Jacoby Myers is a hit, and they're a hit for their draft cost, but they cannot match what AJ Brown can do on a weekly basis. Cannot do it. Won't ever do it. Not possible.
Right.
But look what Ken Walker can do close enough from a ceiling compared to Austin Eckler. Josh Jacobs has the same ceiling right now. The guy is just going nuts every single week. So it's a 2v2 game, right? Would you rather have Ramondre and AJ Brown or Eckler and freaking Jacoby Myers? Ramondre, of course, the Ramondre side, of course.
Right. So like that team, I've been like monitoring that team because I'm like, wow, we drafted a really good running back room in that team. We get Fournette in the second, we get AJ Brown in the third, and we just hit the nuts at running back, and we're off to the freaking races. And to this point, going back to next year, do we think that this is going to change the landscape of how people draft? Are they going to be pushing wide receivers up? And are we going to have to pivot? I don't think we're going to have to right away. But if the trend continues that way, we might have to start looking at how we're going to pivot into these spots.
I think this is the second big thing to quarterback that's going to be the evolution. And not just because of, people will say like, oh, it's the silly, zero RB bros or whatever content creators pushing all this stuff. But when we see the results play out like this, and we're not even that far into the season, right? This is a mid-season of a midway point of the regular season. We're 10 weeks away from the end of the end of the actual best ball season. And we already have basically lost, all the top end running backs in terms of their expectation over the field. Right. So Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Diggs, all those guys still have maintained their gap over the later round wide receivers. We're only in week 7. And if you go, so I do the Battle Royale rankings and stuff like that, and a little peek behind. It's only Tuesday. We haven't fine-tuned the projections and stuff like that. The current highest ceiling projection at running back on the slate is Josh Jacobs. Over the main slate, over Derrick Henry against the Texans. Yes, over Derrick Henry against the Texans. They're close, right? Like these guys are all close, but you're getting by week 7. You're getting an 8th round running back that has the same weekly projection and weekly ceiling as first round running backs by week 7. And this is setting aside. Last year we would talk about, Rashad Penny, right? You mentioned Rashad Penny. By week 17, Rashad Penny had gotten there, but like you still had to get the Rashad Penny team there because he didn't do shit during the entire regular season. We're getting these guys now. We're getting these guys instantly. And so like assuming health, you're going to have just superstar teams with those running backs. And so, we'll see what happens with those running backs next year, right? What is Ramondre's cost? What is Jacobs' cost? What is ETN's cost? Those kinds of things. But I think these dusty old running backs and dusty young running backs, Najee, sorry, Felix, are gonna fall. And who's gonna rise up? The wide receivers, because all the wide receivers are just crushing,
Think of it just like off the top of your head, and not to put you on the spot, but who's going to be a first round running back next year? Like right now, it's
CMC on the 49ers. Eckler. I think ETN will be.
You think ETN's going to bump up to first round next year? He's got the opportunity now to do it. So.
Now without with Robinson gone. We'll see what happens the rest of the season, obviously. But if I had to say right now today, it would be him. I think the maybe not the first round, but Bijan Robinson, depending upon where he lands from Texas, he'll be a rookie next year. He's like the best college running back I've ever seen. The dude is just unbelievable. He'll land somewhere. Kyle Shanahan will probably trade up for him or something and get another running back, because that's what he's got to do. But I'm trying to think. I would still think JT, but it's going to depend again on how he closes this year, because it hasn't been pretty so far. Not Kamara, not Derrick Henry, not Najee, not Dalvin.
Yeah, Mixon. These guys are all going to be pushed down, and there's not guys that are rising up to replace them for the most part. So I think you're going to see maybe only 3, maximum probably 4 running backs. 1 quarterback, which will be Josh Allen. Maybe Andrews, Kelsey
depends on, again. Kelsey looks I know he's old, but doesn't look like anything has changed to me, and his role certainly hasn't changed. And then the kind of another midseason, thing, the tight end position, like we talked about last week, is a disaster, right? So if we're going to push guys up, let's push them up at the positions where I can't get Josh Jacobs in the 9th round, right? Tight end, compare tight end to like the running backs in that range. Let's see. You took Dalton Schultz plus Dalvin Cook or Travis Kelce plus Ramondre Stevenson. Like it's not even freaking close. And so I think the tight ends, quarterbacks, superstar wide receivers with a sprinkling of those like high upside young running backs. I think everybody's going to finally give in to the Mixons, Dalvins, Kamaras, those older running backs. It's going to finally kind of be over for them as first round picks.
Yeah, and disregard Gotham. I know he's in the background
great.
doing
I love
this,
it.
but today is his 6th birthday, so
nice. Ours are 6 too.
Nice. Yeah, he's 6 years old today. I saw this point that Al brought up earlier. Shout out to Al. I think he shows up in my Hometown Ghost Stories chat as well. But my first year maxing BBM and realizing your team running pure with no serious injuries is half the battle. Absolutely.
80% of the battle. It's like all the battle.
It's like 80%. Like you're dragging teams. Like we were talking about before, how you were still dragging CMC teams to the playoffs, but you were essentially dead with those teams once you got there for the most part. So yeah, staying healthy is like a gigantic part of the battle. Just getting through those teams is amazing. I'm going to talk about one of my biggest misses so far this year. And I think it's Mark Andrews. Well, I know it's Mark Andrews.
Yep.
I was skeptical of taking him in the 2nd round because I thought that there were guys, not even just Kyle Pitts, but when you were looking at like your Goddards and your Dawson Knoxes and, even your Hawkinsons here and there, like in that late 7th, 8th round or whatever, I'm like the drafting spot, like value of that 2nd round pick when I could get Tyreek Hill, I could get Mike Evans, I could get AJ Brown. I was like, man, I really just don't want to pound Mark Andrews here because I want all these other guys. And my Mark Andrews exposure is extremely limited. If I look right now, I'm looking at 3% exposure in Best Ball Mania, which is not great. So he's been crushing, and it's funny because the year before I was way overweight on Mark Andrews, and I was one of the guys that he dragged.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. I was like, we're getting too much value on Mark Andrews. I need to take him in the 5th round or whatever it was at that point in time. And then he gets bumped all the way up to the 2nd round. And I'm like, oh man, look at these wide receivers that are here.
Yep.
Or Javonte Williams, like was another guy like in his range.
Saquon early on. Yeah. Early on.
And you still don't feel bad about drafting a lot of those guys, RIP Javonte, but Tyreek Hill, are you upset that you drafted Tyreek Hill? Absolutely not.
Hell no.
Right?
You want to talk about get a dude to week 17 and you feel really like who is the best candidate to be Jamar Chase of last year? He's at the top of the list.
Yeah. So like for me, maybe I missed out on some Andrews and I should have concentrated on getting him a little more, but I don't know how because of who was around there. And even if I time traveled and were like, you need Mark Andrews, I don't know how I would play that 2nd round. Would I be looking at like, well, maybe I'll take Tyreek at the end of the 1st round and then I'll come back around and grab Mark Andrews or something like that. And those are the things that I constantly talk about. I'm like, we need to not like be, beholden to the ADP.
Slaves. Yep.
Yeah. We don't need to do that. And yet I didn't grab enough combos of the late 2nd round guys. And depending on how ADP shakes out next year, maybe I need to be looking at trying to take, 12, 13 pick, take Tyreek Hill, Mark Andrews to get that combo would have been like pretty unique this year. And B, it'd be freaking absolutely killing.
Amazing. Yeah. I think that your final point is the answer for me. Maybe it's a little stubbornness as I get older or whatever, but I feel confident like 99% of the time, like in my process. Like you look back and you're like, even when you're wrong, which I've been wrong, same thing as you. I have 3 Mark Andrews BBM teams. The only saving grace with Mark Andrews for me is I have him on my best team in the 555 on DraftKings. An Eagles onslaught with Cooper Kupp and Mark Andrews. Oof. So that team is just absolutely annihilating. It's still in first by like 100 points, even though like I had like one extra person to fill out a starting lineup this week, and Mark Andrews didn't do anything. He had like the team. I used like 4 Jaguars and like Jerick McKinnon score and Mark Andrews like 1 point at tight end, and it's still up by like 100 or something. So that's like it's still keeping me a Mark Andrews fan. But my thesis basically goes back to what you said about last year. So last year, the price on Mark Andrews in whatever the 5th, 6th round was not taking into account the fact that his volume could grow from what the expectation was when we knew he was an efficient player, right? It was the tight end argument that we made for Javonte Williams this year. Per touch, he's going to crush. No one argued that. He's awesome at football. No one argued that. No one also argued that the offense wasn't awesome or potentially awesome. We were all wrong about that. But with the Ravens offense is going to be good. So at the 5-6 turn or whatever he was, there was nothing but profit. You really couldn't fail. Even if they only threw it 400 times like they did, they threw it like 400 times the year before. That's why his price was. And he didn't run all the routes, right? And so it was like he only had room to grow from there. He was like not even like a small loss, big win. He was like a 0 loss, big win player last year. Fast forward to this year, he gets pumped up into the mid to late 2nd round as a tight end when the year before the Ravens pass rate ballooned for reasons that we should not expect to continue, right? Mm-hmm. The defense collapsed. The team basically collapsed. Lamar got hurt, and Lamar wasn't targeting him like Tyler Huntley was. The defense was giving up 40 points every week, so they had to throw. They threw it like it was something like 650, 670 times or something like that. He ran more routes last year than the Ravens threw passes 2 years ago. And so like everything fell together, which is great for Mark Andrews, but then that was baked into his new cost. And so I was like, I felt comfortable being like, he's going to be great, like from a per route basis and all that. But like you said, I have to give up Tyreek Hill. I have to give up AJ Brown. I have to give up Saquon Barkley. I have to give up, a lot of really good players to get him, and I can get Kyle Pitts a little later, or I can take Kelsey, who was a little more locked into me. I really like Goddard, right, etc. But I think the answer was that can be right, and you should still, given his upside at the tight end position, want to mix him in. So figure out smart ways to do it where you're not sacrificing, right? If you're willing to take, we had the CeeDee Lamb conversation last week. If you're willing to take CeeDee Lamb, reach on CeeDee Lamb in the late 1st, reach on Tyreek Hill in the late 1st, and then take Mark Andrews in the early 2nd. You're accomplishing your uniqueness, and you're getting exposure to the crazy high upside guys in like a dead pocket of the draft. Or take Saquon. You don't want to sacrifice Saquon? Take Saquon 11th and take Mark Andrews at the early 2nd. So I think it's just thinking through those things a little bit more for me next year. How to target the kinds of players you should target instead of being so stuck on, I don't think he's worth it at this cost. I think that's actually one of the things that I hate most about what like our industry does is they're like, oh, this guy can't pay off a 2nd round price, so I can't take him. And I think I fell into that with Mark Andrews.
Yeah. So I think that this compounds with something else we've talked about for me, where we were looking at some of our exposures for the late 1st round guys. So for example, Austin Eckler for me, 1%, Derrick Henry, 5%, Dalvin Cook, 4%, and Najee 6%. And all these guys that I'm mentioning, Joe Mixon 7%. I have my average ADP difference is in the green, meaning I was only getting them when they were a value for the most part. But at the end of the day, at that range, who cares? Literally, who cares? Right? So that's what I'm looking at here. And I'm like, if I had just decided to mix in the guys I liked, like even Saquon, I have 11% Saquon. Why don't I just grab him? At that point, I'm already taking him in that wheelhouse. Just grab Saquon at that late 1st round. Grab DeAndre Swift. Come back and grab, Debo, Mark Andrews, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown. Like that's what I'm going to be looking at next year. If I'm very uncomfortable with the late 1st round picks, I'm just going to skip them. I'm just going to be like, I'll just do some different combinations with these second round guys because the value is essentially the same as the late first round guys.
Yep.
Now my combinations are unique. I like my teams better, and I'm more comfortable with the guys that I actually took. And who cares if I didn't get Dalvin Cook, right? Like,
yep.
So I don't know if we'll have that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was a big miss, not because it was something we didn't see coming. Those are the frustrating misses. I think it was not because we identified a dead zone of the draft, right? Once you get past, we had the top 5 that we all agreed on. Toss Eckler in the top 6. Toss. I had Eckler after these guys, but Diggs, Devontae, Kelsey, right? I think you agreed with me, right? You have the top 5, Diggs, Devontae, Kelsey, Eckler. So there's your top whatever.
Yep.
After that, it was all the same until you got to like AJ Brown. All the same. So we identified that, and we were willing to do it with CeeDee Lamb, of all people. He was the one, and a little bit of Saquon, maybe I was. We were willing to do it with him, but we didn't think about doing it with, like you said, Andrews, Tyreek, all these other guys. I did start doing it with AJ Brown later in the draft season, which I'm happy about. But then I got tunnel vision. I got tunnel vision on doing it with CD. I got tunnel vision on doing it with AJ Brown. And I didn't take a step back and be like, hey, dummy, do this with Mark Andrews. Yeah. Like it would have been that easy. And I would have never been like crazy overweight on Mark Andrews, but I should have given my strategy. It should be more.
Yeah. I should have had 12% Mark Andrews. Like in a nutshell, like just looking at who I draft around that spot. I mean, obviously I went a little nuts on Javonte. I don't regret it because I think if he didn't get hurt, he'd be a smash right now. I mean, you could say that about a lot of guys. But even if I just mixed in a few more Andrews teams from that exposure, I wasn't big on Aaron Jones. So we can even do this in the second round. Like Aaron Jones is still very good, but I had 3% Aaron Jones. Who cares at that point? Right. Like what does 3% Aaron Jones do for me? 2% Alvin Kamara. Again, I got him at like crazy good ADP, but why? Like, why am I drafting Alvin Kamara if I'm only getting 2% of him? I'd just rather have more bullets on some of these guys that I'm like more inclined to have. And I think that's something I might bookmark this video to go back and listen to at the beginning of drafting season next year, just to remind myself, like, here's what I need to do. Here's the traps you fell into. I fell into the first round ADP thing. You get stressed out. It's like everyone thinks that Dalvin Cook's his first rounder still, and I clearly don't, but here he is 4 spots past ADP. Why wouldn't I grab him here when I'm getting, and just like you talk yourself into it. And I want to make sure that I don't talk myself into those spots, especially when I was harping on the fact that, like, if you like 2 5th round wide receivers or 2 guys in the 5th round, grab one of them in the 4th. Get that exposure to those guys. So why wasn't I doing it in the 1st and 2nd round? I think that was like one of my biggest misses of the entire drafting season.
Same. I don't have regrets about Javonte, Trey Lance, even other misses that weren't injury related. I really don't have, like, MVS hasn't totally hit. He should have just went absolutely fucking nuclear this week. I will never let Patrick Mahomes live down that throw that was a freaking 70-yard touchdown that it should have been. So first of all, MVS should have like 3 bomb touchdowns this year. So everybody who said, MVS was a stupid pick because he sucks can suck it, because you're wrong. Mahomes just couldn't get him the ball. Also, everyone who said, Tua can't get Tyreek the ball, and Tyreek only smashed because Mahomes can actually throw it down the field. Mahomes has missed so many goddamn throws down the field, like it's triggering the shit out of me. Like MVS was 5 yards past the DB and Mahomes underthrew it. Like Tua could have got that further than that. So I don't want to hear about the arm strength shit anymore with the Mahomes versus Tua, because he keeps missing those throws. Until he starts connecting on these bombs, I don't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. But I'm comfortable with, again, MVS, Javonte, right? Tons of misses. Got plenty. Kyle Pitts, honestly, I don't really give a shit. I don't. Maybe I was wrong that I should have seen the fact that the Falcons were only going to throw 12 times a game coming, but I didn't see that coming. I'm comfortable betting on Kyle Pitts. It is what it is. But this thing, we talked about it last week. You've talked about it now, where like I identified something and then I wasn't able to kind of apply it. And partially because, like you said, smart people, other people that I trust or whatever are like, yeah, Dalvin Cook's like the 8th overall pick. And I'm like, I don't know. Dalvin Cook's like my 17th overall player. Like I don't, and even then I still don't really want to take him because I like the wide receivers. I'm just being kind of, building in some of that to your rankings. And I think I've got my DFS year has started to go better when I've just been like, no, this is my belief that I don't care what, like, I love these other smart people, but like I'm, this week, you and I talked about it on Sunday. And since the Chiefs, I was like, it's just the Chiefs and the Cowboys were the two things, the only things I cared about in terms of stacking on Sunday. That's what I was going to do. I did it. It worked out. It went well. Had the best Sunday that I've had all year. But falling into that trap it's easier to fall into that trap over the course of 4 months of the offseason of being just like, oh yeah, look, Dalvin in the early second round. Sure. Now I'll take him, as opposed to just sticking to your plan and sticking to what you believe in. And that's definitely a big thing that I'm going to try to do much, much, much better next year.
Yeah. I mean, I think all offseason we were talking about leaning into our biases, and that's what we were trying to do. And we were like, we're leaning into them harder. And now I'm like, next year, I'm like, now I need to lean into them even harder next year. Like I had to keep leaning in, and we still have that little bit of fear. I think everybody has it. Like you get real nervous drafting a guy, especially early, like especially when you're in the first round. You're like, everyone thinks this guy's a first rounder. I have to press this draft button on him, and you gotta and it's not easy. Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's easy to like pass up on some of these guys in the first round or reach and be like, maybe I could have got him on the comeback, or like I could get my exposure some other times. But I'm going to be very heavily looking at this stuff when I'm drafting next year. I was already doing it with the 4th round, the 5th round, even the 3rd round and beyond. I got to make sure I'm doing it right from the jump, right from that first round. If I don't want Joe Mixon, guess what? I'm not going to draft Joe Mixon.
The draft doesn't care about where right. We make these stupid rules where it's like, you just kind of let the first couple picks fall into how it falls into you. And then I'm going to get you, like, usually people talk about it with uniqueness, right? I'm going to get unique, later, or I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to take 2 5th round wide receivers, one in the 4th, one in the 5th. I'm going to take some crazy off the board guy in the 18th round, which literally couldn't fucking matter less. We spend way too much time talking about that, but the draft doesn't care. We identified correctly after the top 5, but after the top 8, that like it didn't matter for multiple rounds. You probably could have taken Josh Allen 10th overall. Honestly, it didn't matter, but we like you said, we gave in to kind of the human element, and that's probably my biggest regret and my biggest thing. I won't forget it next year. I promise you. And we've talked about it enough that I definitely won't forget it.
Right. And it's just, but talking about it consistently really helps drive home the point. And so this point of Chad brings up best ball content, groupthink got too out of hand. I think that's true to some extent, but I think that some of the groupthink was spot on. Like I think that if you were listening to the groupthink, you were off of some of these guys that aren't doing much for you, right? So like it depends on which parts you want to listen to. We all get on our guys, Kyle Pitts being one of them. Like it's understandable why everyone was on Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
Right? Like it makes sense. It just, the only reservation was the offense. So I think we're actually already getting close to an hour. I want to ask you, is there an offense that you want a victory lap that we want to give like an A++ for, that you're super happy that you were on? I mean, there's a few that make a ton of sense for this.
That is an excellent question. Again, I'm going to sort by my exposures. I'm gonna flip this to maybe what was possibly the opposite intent of the question. Yeah, and Andy brings up, I got 2. I'm going to cheat. I got 2. But Andy brings up in the chat the Dolphins. The Dolphins are one. I think back to, so I wrote an article closer to the end of draft season, right? The whole draft cycle had percolated on me, and I'm like, you listen to kind of some of what Chad said with the groupthink, where everybody says, this is how this team is going to play out. This is how this offense is going to play out, right? This team's going to be run heavy. This team's going to be pass heavy. This team's not going to be good on offense, right? Tua is not going to be good enough. The Dolphins are going to run too much because of Mike McDaniel. And I just said, finally, by the end of the year, I was like, but what if that's not true? Like, Tua's good enough. Like, I don't think anybody with an actual brain said Tua is not competent enough to get the ball. If Jimmy G can get the ball to Debo and Ayuk and those guys to win a lot of games, Tua can get the ball to Tyreek fucking Hill and Jalen Waddle. Like, come on, with the actual mastermind of that offense. It was just, are they going to throw enough? Is Tua going to be able to make big plays or whatever, which I get. And it was just like, why is everybody out on Tyreek Hill? Had gone in the first round for how many years? Like, what if Tyreek Hill is the one who makes the offense, not the quarterback, which is kind of turning out to be the case, right? Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are making the offense, and Tua is really accurate. And Mostert is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't draft much Chase Edmonds. I have a little bit of Mostert, a little overweight, but anyway, Miami was one of those where it was like, the market is just like, everybody, the whole timeline, the clips from camp of Tua not being able to throw downfield and all that was just shitting on Miami. And I was just like, yeah, but what if they're actually good? Yeah. Like, they have all the pieces to be good, including a brilliant head coach. And they're throwing like, I forget what the percentage is. I don't know if it's just been, I think it's just been in Tua's starts, but like 13% pass rate over expectation. So like, they're not even they're a really pass heavy offense. And so that one, and then on the flip side, it's the Bucs. It's 100% the Bucs. Yeah. Everybody just said wash, rinse, repeat. It's Tom Brady. It's Chris Godwin. It's they got Julio now. Russell Gage, right? Lenny is back. It's all good. Everybody just said everything is fine. And again, we got closer to the end of the offseason, and I was just like, I don't know, man. These guys are getting old. The offensive line is putrid, like really, really, like legit, really bad. And offensive line play is probably the thing we don't talk about enough over the course of the offseason. And I'm just like, what if like this is the end? I didn't foresee Giselle pulling out the voodoo doll and doing it herself. But like, what if this is the end kind of, for the Bucs? It's not the end for like Godwin and Evans, but like Evans isn't a spring chicken anymore either. Maybe Giselle definitely pulled out the voodoo doll on that bomb touchdown that Evans dropped this week. That I could have caught that goddamn ball and ran in for a touchdown.
He never drops that either.
Oh my God, that was bad. But you know what I mean? Like, everybody was just so sure that Evans was a second round pick while Godwin was banged up over the offseason. Lenny was a second, third round pick. Brady was going around around Russ, around who sucks, obviously, but not that far after Lance. And I was told, I remember
Burrow.
Yeah, by Burrow. Brady was going by Burrow. How stupid does that look now? Yeah. Right? Like, people were still taking Gronk after he retired because of this offense. Like, the Bucs were kind of, I used this last year on the Saints, and the Bucs were kind of like my house of cards offense. Like, if things start to go bad, particularly with this offensive line, this could be a total house of cards situation. And I do feel like, there's plenty of time. They're going to have some good games, but man, it doesn't look good in Tampa right now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's going to be funny to watch that team get gutted next year because Evans has to get traded. God, I mean, like, you got to go.
Brady ain't coming back to this. Brady's not coming back to this. No. Lenny's got 1 year left. They'll figure out something to do with him. Evans will be gone. They'll bring in a young quarterback or something.
Yeah, they'll get a new. Yeah, they got to go full rebuild. To hit on the Miami point, I mean, Tyreek has helped that offense, but let me tell you, of all the players in the NFL that I really like watching, for some reason, Waddle is just like one of my favorite wide receivers to watch. He reminds, like, we always talk about like who's the next Cooper Kupp, and I'm not saying he is Cooper Kupp, but just to watch the way this dude gets wide open, like on the majority of his routes, like he's so good, and I feel like he's still super underrated. Like, I know people like know who he is, but he might be a top 10 wide receiver in the league. Like, he is that good.
He played with he's this dude. he finally got to show what he could do last year. And it was just unfortunately in kind of a dink and dunk situation, right? Where he didn't really get to flash how good he was. And people thought that's what people thought he was Rondale, a juiced up Rondale Moore or whatever, but in reality, this dude is a baller. He was at Alabama. If you watch those when he was a freshman, he was getting on the field behind Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, and Henry Ruggs. And he was getting on the field. And like, he just, every time the dude would like run like 8 routes a game and catch 2 touchdowns for 120 yards. Like I'm not saying he's better necessarily than those guys. He was definitely better than Jeudy and Ruggs. Devonta Smith won the fucking Heisman, so I can't necessarily say he was better than him, but there's an argument to be made. He was always the best wide receiver on that Alabama team from like the moment he stepped on campus. And I think he's just been perennially underrated. Got hurt. He's gotten hurt, multiple different times throughout his college career and pro career. And I think that has just kept people. And then he's played with superstars, right? He's played with Tyreek Hill, played with the Bama guys, and it's just keeping people like kind of off the scent of Jalen Waddle. And that dude is he's a fucking star, man. He's
so good, man. Like I was watching him the other night, and just like some of the routes he was running and how wide open he was. I'm like, I feel like nobody realized, like, he's great. Like, he is a great one. I'm glad I have 12% exposure to him. Miami's a good one. I wish I had a little more. I'm looking at like 9% Tyreek, which should be higher. Jalen's at 12. Mostert I got at 13% because I was big on Mostert during the draft season because just the connection with Mike McDaniel and wanting to run that offense. And 2 is at 10% because of that little tier of him and Trevor Lawrence, where I thought they were the final 2. I'm going to take the obvious one, I think. I mean, I was big on Philly all offseason. And I think this is another point we've brought up that I need to make sure that we're hitting on next year is when a team is trying to tell you something in the offseason, like loudly, like really loudly trying to tell you something, you need to listen. And when a team is trading for a guy with the skill set of AJ Brown, they're not going to run the football. Spoiler alert. That's not what their intent's going to be. So I hammered AJ Brown 20%. I hammered Devonta Smith 25%. Jalen Hurts 14%. Like, that's my victory lap, is like, I thought the Eagles passing game was going to be wheels up this year. And it's even performing over my expectations.
Yep. I was just pulling it up and I have 27% AJ Brown in BBM. The only thing that sucked is kind of with the 0 RB bro, I got a lot of Gainwell, which, there's time.
I got a lot of Gainwell too. Yeah.
There's time for that to hit. He's probably like my 4th or 5th highest owned running, or 3rd or 4th highest owned running back. Gainwell 27%, Devonta Smith 20%, Miles Sanders 19%, Jalen Hurts 16%, Dallas Goedert 16%. So every one of the Eagles guys 16% or higher in BBM. So I'm right there with you. Totally.
Yes. And just to piggyback off this Eagles point, I think it makes it even more because since we're talking about everything for next year, making sure that we have pieces of what we consider to be great offenses. So going into it, I thought the Eagles were going to be a great offense. I thought the Bills were, the Chiefs were. Hell, I might have even thought that the Broncos were going to be a great offense, if we're going to be transparent.
Not great. We need to put a small caveat. And not even that I thought they were going to be that the upside that you got on the Broncos players was like, I mean, you were getting potentially, I'm not saying they're the same players, but DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in the 4th, 5th round, and the best running back Russell Wilson has ever. Russell Wilson made Chris Carson into like an awesome running back, and Rashad Penny and all that. Yep. And you're getting a superstar young running back at the 2-3 turn or whatever. So just the upside was crazy, and what an epic. Albert O isn't even goddamn active on game days anymore. Can they trade him, please?
They need to trade him. Like, I need Albert O to go to a spot where
he
has, please, for my wallet. I need 2 things to happen.
My dogs need to eat. My dogs need to eat.
Yeah. We're on our last bin of food right over here for Gotham. It's his birthday.
He was eating a toy in the corner of the room because he's so fucking hungry.
I mean, he got his birthday dinner with his steak and stuff, but I told him this is probably it. It's like, we need to ration this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like
eat it slow. Dogs don't eat slow, but you said you better eat that slow because it might be a little while. Albert O's not even playing on Sundays.
We have a 10-pound container of food. I'm probably gonna have to start splitting it with you because I don't know if I can eat like this. Please trade Albert O because I need to feed my family, which is me and my dog. That's one trade I need to happen, and I need this Kareem Hunt trade to just absolutely manifest so that my Dearness bags can start to look good again. And it seems like, but who's going to trade for Kareem Hunt now is like what I was trying to figure out earlier.
I don't know. These NFL teams are obsessed with these goddamn running backs, man. It's great. If you've ever been good in the NFL at running back, somebody wants you. They're either going to trade for you or pick you up off the street. Latavius Murray's like older than I'm 34. Latavius Murray's older than me out here and getting signed. Not only getting signed, the coach is like, I'm so excited to play Latavius Murray. I'm like, that dude probably can't get out of bed on Monday mornings because his body hurts so bad. And this coach is like juiced up to give him 20 carries. Like these coaches and these running backs is crazy. So I kind of think somebody's gonna trade for Hunt.
And it's so sad. I mean, we've seen it posted on Twitter 1,000 times, but it's so true. The perfect spot for Hunt is Kansas City. And I just don't know if they'll do it, but they should. Who cares? I mean, it
won't cost that much. I think they should.
Right. I'm just looking at it like if they're worried about it from like a PR standpoint, like this is a guy that we cut for or traded or whatever they did to get rid of him for like, disciplinary reasons for the most part. But he hasn't done anything else like second chance.
He didn't give a shit about Tyreek's problems. So really, what's the difference?
Right. Like that was your stand. Yeah. It's because a video came out, right? Like as soon as the video comes out. But yeah, at this point, he hasn't done anything else. And Kareem Hunt on that Chiefs team, it's
Damian Williams on steroids. When Damian Williams was the man there on absolute steroids.
Yeah. So I hope he goes somewhere. Or even Dearness. Trade Dearness. Do something. Throw me a bone here. Like we are going to be starving. We need these. We need these things to happen. Please. Let us eat.
Also, can the Rams trade for some offensive line play? Because Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers has literally quit. Cam Akers went to the island with Will Fuller.
Will Fuller.
Cam Akers went to go hang out with Will Fuller for the rest of the season. And Darrell Henderson, I have like 35%. He's my highest owned player, I think. Him and Gabe. Darrell Henderson's my highest owned running back. And it's useless. On the Super Bowl champs, it's useless because their offensive line is a bunch of UNIs out there trying to block NFL defensive linemen. Like, can we get some blocking, please?
I mean, I'd love for Elijah Moore to be traded, Sir Sheba, but let's be real here. The Jets are not trading Elijah Moore.
No.
Like, come on. Like, demanding a trade in your second year is absolutely wild because you didn't get. I mean, I'd want to trade too if I was playing with Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
this dude cannot play football to save his life. They are better off with Joe Flacco in at quarterback, which is like in the year 2022, something I've never thought I would say in my life.
Really quick on that. I do just want to say, like, it's ridiculous that he kind of threw a pity party and like demanded a trade, in the heat of the moment. Probably it's at least how it seemed. Maybe it's been building up, but in the heat of the moment. But I do I do just feel like we should be pro player in like all these situations. Like he was a second round. He wasn't a first round pick. He was a second round pick. He hasn't made that much money yet. He's proven he's good. I think we can all agree he's proven that he's maybe some would agree not a superstar, but like I think he's proven that he's probably deserving of the bag, whatever you would like to call the bag. He's gonna get life-changing money in a contract from an NFL team, and this offense is holding him back from doing that. Now, it's his second year, but the average NFL career is very short. He could go out and get smoked. He could go out and get smoked in an NFL game and never make any money, ever again. And never have a chance to set his family up because he's playing with this loser Mormon quarterback that like can't, complete a pass to anybody. And so like, I think it was a little over the top of what he did, but I also like, man, I feel for these dudes because it's like he's like, I got 2 years to prove that I can make life-changing money, and I'm never gonna do it here. He's like, he sees the writing on the wall. He sees he has no shot of getting, $100 million or whatever playing with this team.
Right. And just to hit on these second-year wide receivers, Vadim says Tony to Kansas City, though. Dude, how many injuries do you think Tony's going to sustain on his flight from New York to Kansas City? You can't trade for that guy. He's gonna tear both quads. He's gonna tear a bicep going through security. There's no chance that Kadarius Toney can safely make it to Kansas City if he got traded there.
The steps up on a PJ are like kind of small. He'd like roll his ankle or something like that going up it.
It would just be like the dumbest movie sequence of all time, where you just see this guy just trying to just adding a brace every time. By the time he gets to Kansas City, he's in a full body cast.
He would get on the plane looking healthy, and he would show up with like a neck brace on.
What happened? I sat in the wrong seat. You don't want to even know what
exactly. We hit turbulence, and I sprained my neck. I'm out for the next 4 weeks.
Is there anything else you kind of wanted to hit on for the mid-year point of the show?
I was just going to say, to wrap, we should kind of look forward and say, okay, here's what's happened. Is there anything that you think maybe like different moving forward? Right. So we kind of talked quickly at the top that it was like, oh yeah, you get to week 7 and everybody's like, oh, look at my advanced trade, and I drafted X amount of this player. Right. Last year at this time, if you went all in on Derrick Henry, you had the greatest advance rate of all time, and you were drawing dead when you got to the playoffs. That was an injury, but there's also like performance changes, right? Elijah Moore has been stone dust, and I expect he's going to be stone dust the rest of the year, but things change, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown comes on, breaks out. Is there anything that you've thought about that, like, maybe not even necessarily is like it's just been bad, but might change, or you like have high hopes for, right? I don't have high hopes for Elijah Moore, but there might be players moving forward that haven't been great that I do still have high hopes for and like feel good about if they're on my teams.
I mean, this is kind of like a cop-out answer because it's not evergreen, and basically by this time next week we'll know. It is the trade deadline. I think NFL teams are more apt to trade players now. Like when we were kids, like can you even remember a significant in-season trade? Like it just didn't happen. Like you stood pat. And I think teams are starting to evaluate their rosters and be like, well, we definitely can't win this year. We need to plan for the future. And if we trade, who just got traded? I already forget who was. You had the James Robinson trade.
James Robinson
was one of the trades. Yeah, but like trades like that wouldn't even happen. James Robinson, CMC, that's the one I'm looking for. So like the CMC trade would have never happened when we were kids. It would not have, because if that's the case, Barry Sanders would have got traded at some point.
Yeah, true.
Right? Like Barry Sanders would have got traded and they would have started building for the future, but they wouldn't do that. So hoping not everyone's going to get traded that we want to get traded. Like teams are still a little reserved on it, but that's starting to happen more. You're starting to see it happen more like the other sports where teams understand, like, we have a window. Some of these players are great. And look at the CMC trade. I don't think either team really lost that trade. And if anyone did, it's probably San Francisco.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Like if anyone lost the trade, it's San Francisco, because they're going all in to win now. And if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, potentially next year, then that trade was very costly. The Rams are starting to do this more so in the offseason, but they're making trades and they got rid of all of their draft picks to win a Super Bowl. And it was successful. You win a Super Bowl in the NFL, you did something successful, even if you mortgage your future for the next 5 years. It's so hard to win. So in terms of best ball, understanding that, CMC is going to be an outlier probably. We never drafted CMC with the thesis being that he was going to get traded, right? You were never like, I'm drafting CMC number 1 overall because he's probably going to end up on a Super Bowl contender. And that's why I'm doing it. Like, you can't go into the season like that. But like some of these guys that we're worried about, we can now like really like, cross our fingers. Like, God, I hope they trade this guy because now CMC is way more valuable than Jonathan Taylor. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, CMC was going to be one of my guys that like projecting forward. If you have a team that's not like dead, right? You don't have Trey Lance, Javonte, whatever on your CMC team. Like I would be jacked. Like if that team is advancing already, I would be very excited. If that team was like within 100 points or something, I would be like seriously excited. If I had a team that I looked at and said, okay, it's healthy, everything around it is fine, right? The guy, you don't want a bunch of Kenny Galladays on it, but like if everything else is fine and I had a CMC team that I felt good about, I would be really excited about that team because I think he's going to go nuts.
I think so too, and I think that was part. And I'm saying that wasn't part of the thesis of drafting CMC 1 over Jonathan Taylor, but I also think that little caveat. And I'm kind of jumping all over the place. Like everyone was so convinced that Jonathan Taylor was the 101, and going back to handcuffing yourself. Like maybe we take a step back next year when we see what the top 3 are, and should we be evaluating that more? So overall, right now, I'm really like sweating the trade deadline to answer the question. What about you?
I like that. I was gonna do maybe not again, kind of like my Bucs.
Can I cut in real quick? Sorry, but Dearness Johnson was part of that plan for the trade deadline.
100%. So like we didn't know when it was gonna. No one said I predict it's gonna happen before the season, right? Hunt or Dearness getting traded. But the point was you have outs to either one of those guys getting traded, and then both of them get a huge boost.
Yeah, and
there's so many outcomes. Or Chubb gets hurt.
Right. And my highest scoring BBM team right now has Chubb and Kareem Hunt, which was never drafted with the intent that they were going to play on the same team all year. Right. It was drafted with the intent that Hunt was going to get traded. If you drafted Chubb and Hunt, it was with the intent that, so you can still do it. I'm not saying like, so as I'm drafting teams again next year, there are guys that I'm going to be targeting. Like maybe I'm going to draft him at this spot because it's going to make sense for the team to move him. So just to expand upon that a little bit, I think you can play into that when you're drafting your teams next year, but you have to be selective on who you're doing that with.
I totally agree. My, like I said, my kind of projecting forward take is maybe I'm just being doomsday today. I guess I was positive about the Dolphins, but my it's like a Bucs-esque take where we already started to see this with the Colts, where they were like, look, they looked inside and they said, we're not winning the Super Bowl. We're not winning the Super Bowl, which is like, honestly, more teams should do this. Like from an NFL perspective, this is smart. Teams are basically probably looking at what the NBA and Major League Baseball are doing, where the teams that realize that they can't win are tanking, rebuilding, right? Trying to get, and in the NFL, NBA teams are doing it, and there's a lottery. If you're the worst team in the NBA, you would get like a 13% chance or whatever it is to get the first overall pick, and teams are still tanking just to try to get more, ping pong balls in the little thing. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, you get the first pick. There's no lottery. You finish last in the league, you get the first pick. So there's way more incentive for these teams when things start to go south to shut it down. And I actually don't think the Colts are shutting it down. I think that they're just like, Matt Ryan, he's fucking dust. Like, this is over. So we might as well see what we got in Ellinger. And if he sucks and we lose, we're going to lose anyway. They were going to lose with Matt Ryan. Mm-hmm. So actually, I think some of the takes on that were a little, weird, but they're like, what do we have to lose? Maybe Ellinger is just a little bit better, or he sucks and we lose games. We're going to lose. We'll get a top 5 pick and it's all good. I think we're going to see probably some unexpected teams shut it down the stretch, and it's going to have huge implications on best ball. 2 teams, we mentioned one, the Bucs. I'm very concerned about the Bucs getting to a point where if they keep losing, Tom Brady is not going to be interested in playing in week 17, right? If you have a Bucs stack and they're 5 and whatever, 5 and 14 or 5 and 14, 5 and 11 in week 17. Do you think that they're like Tom Brady's going to give a shit? No, he's not going to play. They're going to play Kyle Trask or whatever. And Evans isn't going to play and Lenny's not going to play. So maybe that's good for Rachaad White. But, you're not gonna enjoy Bucs stacks. I have very real concerns. Now they're tied for first in their division. That's the only like caveat to that. Their division is absolutely
garbage,
putrid. It's also the only saving grace I have for my Marcus Mariota and Kyle Pitts teams. I'm really concerned with the Packers. Yeah. They also really suck. They're really bad and they're losing players. So I and Aaron Rodgers is kind of the same thing. Like, why would Aaron Rodgers play later in the year if it's over? And they have Jordan Love, right? So it's even more apparent with the Packers. It's like, we might as well play Jordan. We spent a first round pick on this kid and the seasen's over.
Let's 8 years ago.
Yeah. Exactly. Pre-COVID, Rodgers didn't come out as a COVID denier, before they drafted Jordan Love, but they're not very good. Very real concerns about the Packers shutting it down. And then the one that's the scariest for me is the Rams. They're bad. They are bad. Their division is like up for grabs because kind of each team keeps beating each other up and whatever. And Jimmy G punts off enough games that the Niners don't run away with it, even though they should. But man, their offense is just not good, and the defense is not good enough to continue to win them games. The extra wild card helps all these teams, but I think we're going to get to, I don't know specifically who it is, but we're going to get to week 15, 16, 17. And some of these teams that we did not expect are going to be shutting it down. And, NBA tanked style, right? If anybody watches the NBA, you get to February and the Thunder are playing, a bunch of dudes playing at the from they picked up from the YMCA. And that's what's going to be going on in the NFL on a couple teams that I'm legit worried about for best ball playoffs.
I'm going to give us some kudos though, because we were real low on the Packers going into the season. I remember doing those.
No Packers. I've literally like zero Packers. Some Tunyon, I think.
Tunyon's probably my most owned Packer for sure. I would assume like that's how that checks out for me. But yeah, it's, how do I find Green Bay? There we go. Yeah, Tunyon.
No one over 4%. I have no one over 4%.
Tunyon,
AJ Dillon, and then Aaron Jones.
I have 18% Tunyon. Just because I liked him late in drafts. But point being, kudos to us because we were like, we're not drafting these Green Bay Packers. This team looks like it's set up for a disaster. But on the flip side, we didn't think that about the Bucs. We didn't think that about the Rams, right? And I do think that both of those teams can still bail themselves out late in the year. I don't think Green Bay can bail themselves out. I think they are just absolute dust.
This week was bad, like really bad for them. Losing to Washington with Taylor Heineke was really bad.
Yeah, and I still don't understand why Washington played Heineke and not Howell, but here we are. So I think that's going to kind of do it for me on this. We hit a lot of the points that I wanted to hit personally for this particular show. And like I said, this is one that I'm probably going to bookmark and go back and watch in February when we start. Can you believe that we're going to be gearing up for the new season already in February?
It's almost November. This is nuts.
Yeah, and we're like, we already have to start looking forward to February for this, but here we are. Best ball season just never ends. It is just 24/7 on the go, and So, anything you wanted to add before we get out of here?
I was just going to add. You mentioned earlier that playoff best ball season is probably coming soon. We will definitely be supporting that, obviously with content and draft streams and written content and rankings and strategy articles and all of that. But we also have already started to set up both Draft IQ and the draft overlays to support playoff best ball. So if you're a premium subscriber, you have access to the browser extension. It's ready to lock and load on the playoff best ball contest. So as you're drafting, you'll be able to see, right, the correlations and how much exposure you have to players and stacks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm already pretty excited about that. And then I had mentioned before, I think in the Discord, that we are not totally pivoting, but slightly pivoting to a little bit different content schedule and scheme, figuring out pinning that down 100% here in the next couple of days. But you're going to start to see probably tomorrow some new content kind of methods from us on the media side that I'm also pretty excited about. I think it's going to be more helpful as we support battle royales and week to week best ball content. I love the live streams. We're going to keep doing those because I love just talking to you guys, but also from a usefulness of the content side of things, I want to deliver maybe some shorter form stuff that you guys can consume quicker than listening to us talk for an hour. You don't need to listen to us talk for an hour and a half to hear about how week
Every
8
day.
went. Yeah, exactly.
So what I'm going to end with right now is the battle royal standings, the top 3 right now.
No. The Royal Rumble.
The Royal Rumble. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm in last.
You said you are in last. So shout out to you for having to do something crazy that we end up coming up with.
I have a Bears onslaught and Trey Lance on this team.
Thinking?
I don't know. I was drunk.
So Overzet is in first with 876.76 points. Shocking number 2, we have Dan Bach and 833.24. And Chess Liam just gets to 3 because he's a homer and only drafts
3
Bills.
Yeah, he only drafted the Bills.
Yeah, he literally only drafted all of the Bills, but he's in third with 810.20. I am in 8th place with 759.70. Sad times. Javonte Williams really hurt this roster, but I still have faith that we can come back and win it. And Erik Beimfohr, the only person still in the 600s, behind Chris Spags, who actually drafted Drew Lock on his team. You are in last place with 692.72 points. Do you think you'll be able to pass Spags so that you're not in last place by the end of the year?
No. Absolutely not. The last I looked, I don't remember the team. I know that I have literally a Bears onslaught. Fields, Montgomery, Mooney. I don't remember everything from that. It was a marathon stream and it was a lot of fun, and I was mostly just enjoying hanging out. I auto picked Michael Gallup and I think Jamison Williams. Do I have those 2 guys on that team? So that's not good.
You do. Those are your last 2 wideouts.
Yeah. So generally in a 12-team league where there's no playoffs and you're just trying to, win the regular season, it's probably not very good to pick the guys that are not going to play during the regular season. So that has very much hurt. Kelsey. You have Kelsey, but you know who you have for your second tight end? So we can give you a little bit of props. You have Dulcich as your second tight end. Oh, baby. Dulcich is going to be playing in the flex for me real quick.
That's fun. But if we looked at your running backs, it's Montgomery, Henderson, Gainwell, Darrell Williams, Gus Edwards, and Donta Foreman.
Maybe what's Spags' team? The running backs are okay.
So
Foreman is fine now. Gus is fine now.
Spags had Prescott, Tannehill, and Locke on his team, and God, is Tannehill bad. So bad. So that team I told you about with Overzet, our big dog is Jalen Hurts, but for some reason we have Tannehill and Zach Wilson as quarterbacks, and we played Zach Wilson 7 over Tannehill. It's just so crazy how bad they're. That shows you why bye weeks don't matter, if anything.
Yeah.
If anything,
I think we said this last week. I think Pete tweeted it. I'll screw up the names or whatever, but it was bye week bros so pumped to head into week 7 with Cole Kmet to cover their Dawson Knox bye for his whopping 2 points. I don't even know if he got 2. I don't even know if he got 2 points.
Right. So yeah, that's what's going on in the Royal Rumble, which I'm looking forward to doing again next year. That'll be a lot of fun. But I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of the Spike Week Football Show. A little bit longer. We will be having shorter form content coming out as discussed, and we'll be starting that tomorrow. So until next time, we'll see you later. Peace.